Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
The Congress party seems to be reeling from a slew of infightings, setbacks, election debacles and fissures that only seem to be deepening. With the passing away of veteran leader Ahmed Patel, the void in the top brass of the party leadership may only have increased manifold. I have with me Congress leader and Member of Parliament Karti Chidambaram, who is one of the most vocal voices to call out this void in the top leadership. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Sir, you were one of the first ones to endorse and reiterate the statement made by senior leader Kapil Sibal, where he called for party leadership to introspect after the Bihar loss. Why did you feel the need to do that?
See, it's not just me. These are concerns which are being raised by many people consistently. There have been very senior people, former chief ministers like Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad, Mr. Veerappa Moily, Mr. Huda, and members of parliament as well, even Lok Sabha members like Shashi Tharoor, Manish Tiwari, have all raised this issue. It's not just as a fallout after Bihar. You see, the last two general elections, the Congress has cumulatively won less than 100 seats. 52 in this 2019 election and about 44 in 2014. So obviously things are not electorally going right for us. So we need to really think, and our principal opposition is the BJP, which seems to be a much more organized and well-oiled political machinery, and they seem to be rolling out electoral victories in far greater rate than us. So it's time to sort of take stock, see if there's any course correction need to be made, whether organizationally we need to change things, or whether we need to change things in terms of how we make our outreach with the public at large. So it's as any organization, as any political party, as any entity would do when things are not going well, it's only right that we introspect, collectively ideate and then act. So I was only endorsing a view which is widely held. And it's only the sensible thing to do.
Right. Let's talk about some of the more tangible deliverables that you are asking for here. When you're asking for the party to introspect, are you also asking for elections to the post of the president, elections to the CWC? Are you asking for a brand new leadership? What are the tangible, concrete?
Very, very clear. People sometimes unfairly label the Congress party as being dominated by a family. See, political parties make choices, and the honest and widespread choice within the Congress party is that somebody from the Gandhi family must lead it. Mrs. Gandhi is the president of the party, and even if elections are held today, it's very clear and it will be universally accepted that Rahul Gandhi will become the president of the party. That's fine.
You think he'll be voted back into the post?
He will absolutely be voted back to be president of the party. There's no doubt about it. That is the universal wish of all party workers in it. But that is not, and somehow the media is focused on who is the president and whether that is some sort of the process of electing the president or coming up with alternatives to the president will solve whatever electoral debacles we are facing. That's not correct. See, first I think we need to come up with a narrative. While we are taking on the BJP, we also the BJP is a very they have an ideological backbone which seems to which I don't agree with. Their version of India, their version of society is not something that I agree with, and nobody in the Congress will agree with. But they seem to be articulating that and communicating that very forcefully. So we need to give a counter narrative. We do stand for things which are very different from them, but we need to formulate that properly and take it out to the people and have mass contact. So there are lots of other things we need to do. This obsession of whether there's going to be an election to elect the party president, who's going to be party president alone is not at all, in my opinion, that's one more minor detail. In fact, there are far more greater things which we need to do, far more important things we need to do in order to take on the BJP. And elections are happening all the time, so we need to be prepared for that. We need to leverage social media. We need to have grand outreach programs with the population at large, not just with party workers, but with civil society. And we need to formulate what we want to communicate with them. Then we We need to nurture local leaders. State elections are not won or lost by national leaders. They are won by state leaders. So we need to understand all those dynamics and be ready. In fact, one of the suggestions I gave is that we should appoint somebody as General Secretary elections, because elections is a full-time job. And elections is not about just selecting candidates, filing nominations and running a campaign for those 3 weeks before polling. It's something you do even maybe 6 months in advance. And I even gave an example that the Nyai scheme which we came up with before the last Lok Sabha elections, if we had communicated that, say maybe 4 or 5 or even 6 months earlier, it could have actually seeped into the psyche of the people and would have made a big difference. So it takes time for any campaign to also to get any traction. So elections are not something which you do in 3 weeks. Elections are something which you do all the time. And so there needs to be some sort of organizational framework to deal with that, and with the communication, with the strategizing and the polling. Today polling is becoming so scientific and granular. I think large political parties must constantly do polling on various issues to understand the pulse of the nation, of the people. And of course you also need to have big outreach programs. You can't meeting party workers is one, but party workers must meet populations at large, and then there must be two-way communication. So there are many other things which need to be done, and one shouldn't just get obsessed about the process of electing a president. And to keep the unity of the party and and universal acceptability is clearly it will be Rahul Gandhi whenever the elections are held, and I have no doubt about that.
You talked about having a separate body that only looks after elections. Would you like to head such a body? Is that something?
No, I think the most competent, in my opinion, is that I am a first-time MP. I mean, I don't really hold any grand experience, even though I've been in politics for close to 25 years. I've worked in elections before. I've been a candidate, losing candidate once before and a winning candidate once. And I've worked in elections as an election agent. I've campaigned for party. But I'm not competent to be General Secretary elections. In fact, if given me a choice on who I would suggest, I have two names in mind. One is Mr. Kamal Nath or Mr. D.K. Shivakumar.
Okay.
Kamal Nath is the winningest MP in the history of India. So I think he understands how to win elections. And D.K. Shivakumar is also a proven manager. I would actually, and proven leader, and he's younger. So I would, if given the choice, I would, nominate one of them to be General Secretary elections.
Right. You in fact made a very rather interesting comment yesterday. You tweeted out this view of yours that you believe that Priyanka Gandhi, who's the General Secretary in charge of Uttar Pradesh, she should contest the next Tamil Nadu elections from the Kanyakumari. What exactly was the rationale? Because it did come across as slightly surprising to many, given the fact that she's been trying to hold her base in Uttar Pradesh.
I'll explain my logic.
Yes.
I have a logic. There is some method in my madness. I'm not as random as you think I am. You see, I played sport, and I played sport to a decent level. When things don't go well, you need to change things up. You can't just play the same game. You need to, fire up somebody's imagination. You need to, unsettle the opposition. You need to do things differently. You can't just carry on as business as usual. First is, unfortunately, there is going to be a by-election in Kanyakumari. Our good friend and senior Congress leader Vasant Kumar unfortunately passed away due to COVID, and this election is going to come now. And I think what I hear is that the notification will come rather soon, because you can't keep a seat vacant for too many months. The next general election is only about 3.5 years later. So if Priyanka Gandhi wants to contest election from UP, that opportunity is not going to come now. So I think it will fire up the imagination of the average Congress worker if Priyanka Gandhi chooses to contest from Kanyakumari. Because Kanyakumari also is symbolically a very important seat. It is the tip of India. It's sort of looking up to India from the bottom up, and and Tamil Nadu is going to go through an assembly election now. It will bring great enthusiasm to the cadre of the party in Tamil Nadu for sure, and all over India, because if Priyanka Gandhi enters parliament, that itself will be a talking point. It will. I mean, I know our numbers are not great in parliament, but having Priyanka in parliament with her feisty personality, it will definitely help. And this argument, some people are telling me, she should concentrate on UP. People are wrong. It is members of parliament and others from other states who manage the affairs of another state. So, for example, we have Dinesh Gundurao, who's from Karnataka, who's in charge of Tamil Nadu. So there are always the in charge is not from the same state. So for Priyanka to contest from Kanyakumari, which I think will be a sure shot win for her, because it's a very strong Congress seat, and it is traditionally the strongest Congress seat. We will give an opportunity for her to come to parliament, and she can still continue to be be General Secretary in charge of UP. That doesn't prohibit her from being General Secretary in charge of UP at all. So, but today when things are not the rosiest and we are not the mood of the average party worker will definitely be uplifted, knowing that Priyanka Gandhi is contesting an election and is going to enter Parliament. It will definitely have a ripple effect in Tamil Nadu, and it will also fire up the imagination in the rest of India.
Yeah, but Rahul Gandhi lost his traditional Congress bastion. What did Priyanka Gandhi lose to? Won't it be embarrassing?
No, see, winning and losing elections are part of the game. So what if people win and lose elections? I mean, Mr. Vajpayee, who is one of the most celebrated prime ministers of the Sangh Parivar, lost an election too. So what? So winning, I mean, the greatest tennis players lose early in a Grand Slam. So it doesn't matter. But I can assure you that if Priyanka Gandhi chooses to contest the Kanyakumari seat, she will win by a thumping majority.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about Bihar. The analysis, post-poll analysis, post the results, there was this perception that Congress may have ended up biting more than it could chew in terms of the number of seats that it contested. Do you think ultimately then the fault lies in the poll strategy itself?
See, I don't know Bihar very well. I don't speak Hindi, so I don't understand the nuances of Bihar politics. I mean, what my knowledge is only from the media and from anecdotal conversations I have with people. See, this is a new terminology now in politics called strike rate. You contest X number of seats, you win so many seats, so your strike rate is X, or your strike rate is below X, or whatever it is. I can't pass judgment on whether we should have contested fewer seats. But of course, the margins have been rather tight. This is not an election where our front has lost by a huge margin. If you actually analyze the granular data, the delta is only about 12,000 votes overall in the state. Yeah. So this could have been just minor booth management, third-party candidates cutting votes, maybe rebels contesting, or not campaigning effectively or aggressively in certain areas. So this could be little things which could have been fine-tuned, which could have had a different result. So I am really not in any position to offer much greater insights than what you already know. But to extrapolate the Bihar results and to say the Congress only has this strike rate, so in the rest of the country it should also contest lesser seats when it's in alliance, is completely wrong analysis. Because I'll go back to tennis again, because each set is independent in tennis, so it doesn't matter whether you win a set 7-6 or 6-love, you still start at love all in the next set. So that way, what happens in Bihar has no bearing in any other state, because the other state's election will be decided on local factors and the issues of the day. So this will have no bearing at all on...
It's a perception issue too, right? If it's perceived as being a weak alliance partner.
No, in Bihar, in that election, that's right. All. It doesn't mean... See, for example, in Tamil Nadu, the Congress is a great value adder. We are not a mere addition. We are a multiplier. The reason we are a multiplier is when we contest by ourselves, and we have contested by ourselves without any alliance, we get a certain vote. But the minute we are in an alliance, people believe that there is a greater chance of winning, so more people come out and vote for the formation. And also the fact that the Congress is in a formation gives it a secular seal. It's an inclusive seal of approval. People feel comfortable. People feel confident that this will be an inclusive alliance and not the sectarian alliance. So there is a great value which the Congress brings to the table, particularly in Tamil Nadu, as it would in other parts of India.
Right. Ever since you, Mr. Sibal, Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad, a bunch of leaders have started speaking for or calling for a need for introspection. There is this section of the party that is saying that, look, why are these people taking to the public forums? Why aren't they speaking internally? And these themselves are party leaders, so why aren't they strengthening the party cadre instead of pointing fingers?
I think, I agree with I agree that people might have a differing view. But people have explained why they are saying this in public forums, because there are no organized forums internally in which they can actually take this up and there is actually follow-up happening. That is why they're taking it to public forums. And there's nothing wrong. We are a large political party. Our debate should be public. And we don't need to, our strategizing could be, our minute tactics could be, which we want to keep it confidential. But larger issues, I believe in transparency, and a large party which has got presence all over India should actually ideate and argue publicly.
Right at the beginning of this interview, you said that the BJP and the RSS, they are able to articulate their idea of India much better. I want to understand, there are Congress leaders most prominently Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who constantly tries to reiterate the idea of India that the Congress holds, which is a secular, inclusive India. Do you think lately this allegation that Congress has become rather BJP light in terms of trying to emulate a lot of soft Hindutva aspects, in terms of trying to not take strong positions on a lot of issues that concern minorities or marginalized people? Do you think that is a valid allegation, and do you think that point needs to be articulated much more forcefully by the party?
The BJP is very strident in what it believes. You go ask an average BJP worker, he believes in certain things very stridently, which I don't agree with. I mean, they have an objection to a scene in Suitable Boy in Netflix. I mean, that's the kind of fundamentalism and militancy they seem to propagate. Our view of India is very different, but we need to articulate that view clearly and communicate that. But I don't believe in Hindutva light. I don't believe in that. I think I consider myself to be quite I'm a temple going, superstitious, astrology believing, ritualistic person. But I don't believe in sort of wearing that on my basing my politics around my personal beliefs. But the point is that by being secular, we should perhaps articulate it by saying that we treat all faiths equally and all faiths are private, as opposed to and then also clearly saying church and state should be separate. So but it is not, being secular does not mean that you don't respect the Hindu traditions and the faith. As I said, I am a very temple going, religious, ritualistic person. So there is no reason for, and I am secular, and there is no contradiction between both. So but when I say secular, it means that I respect everybody's personal faith or lack of faith, and the church and state are separate, and we need to articulate that a little better, instead of by being supportive of people of minority faiths does not mean that you're against the faiths of people who are of the majority, or if you're going to accommodate the interests of the majority, or you are going to acknowledge their preferences in certain religious things, does not mean you're obliterating or sort of pushing away the minorities. I think we need to articulate that well. But I don't believe in this Hindutva light strategy which somebody says. There are certain things which we must be very, very clear about. And I for one have said this. I know this is not a very popular thing. I don't think India needs any more new places of worship. We have enough places of worship in India. We have enough churches, enough mosques, enough temples, enough gurudwaras, enough synagogues. So we don't need, maybe we don't have enough synagogues, I don't know. But we don't need newer places of worship. There is enough places of worship. In fact, we should preserve the places of worship we have, which are dilapidated, and maybe preserve our heritage, as opposed to have this strident interest in going and creating newer places of worship. And worship and faith are private affairs. That is my personal belief, and I respect everybody to have their own faith or lack of faith, but should not be the basis of doing politics or to be the basis of public discourse.
Right. Mr. Ahmed Patel, senior veteran leader of the Congress party, passed away early hours of Wednesday morning. He was suffering from COVID, and a lot of people immediately, the conversation started about how he was in many ways an irreplaceable leader for the Congress party in terms of his poll strategy or his consensus building skills, just his grit and his agility to think on his feet, etc., etc. Do you think there, in that sense, the void in the top brass of leadership will further because of his absence?
I think Mr. Ahmed Patel was a unique person. I mean, I am fond of him personally, and I think he was also paternalistic towards me. So there has been a personal bond between him and me. But he was the man of all reasons and all seasons for the Congress party. And he was this self-effacing backroom political operator who knew people across the aisle. I think his experience of understanding the Congress organization and understanding functionaries at every level of organization and relationships he had with every level of the organization, plus the relationships he had across party lines, is not a skill set which can be easily replaced. So I think it's a big void for the Congress party, particularly the fact that he had relationships with people. He could pick up the phone and speak to anybody. I mean, that only comes with over the years experience and building relationships with people, and the fact that he could reach out to anybody within the party and outside the party, and he always kept a low profile. He was not in the media all the time, and he never he's always that's a very rare trait. There are not too many people who are willing to work in the back end and still do the solid foundational work without being in the limelight, and I think it's not easy to replace AP Saab.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Twitter as well as Facebook for more such videos. Thank you for watching. This is Fatima Khan reporting for The Print.